Hello everyone, it's David. Welcome to class. You may be shocked to hear that all humans begin life in the womb as females. There is a 50% chance of a Y chromosome being present, which determines if they will turn into a male or not. If there is a Y chromosome, then testosterone will begin to change the body to become male. The testosterone that is released in the body causes profound effects on the psychological and physical development of the person. So how does this biological transformation relate to the differences between grown men and women? In today's lesson, we are going to compare the behavior of men and women and how they should treat each other in society. We will also look at how gender and sexual preference can be thought of as a spectrum like color, rather than a binary like a 1 or a 0. This lesson has 3 parts. Part 1 talks about how biological changes during puberty affect boys and girls. Part 2 discusses the differences between men and women in the workplace. In Part 3, we will explain how gender and sexual preference are a spectrum, not a binary. Biological forces guide the way that people think and feel. This means that the biological differences between men and women affect the way they experience the world and how they behave in it. Before puberty, young boys and girls have a similar body composition. While most people assume that young boys have very different interests than young girls, this behavior is often socially conditioned by the parents. Parents can influence their children's interests by deciding which toys to purchase and what media their child is exposed to. Despite common stereotypes, many young boys genuinely enjoy playing with dolls, and many young girls enjoy playing with toy trucks. Parents also model the gender roles they expect their child to follow. Children observe how their mother and father act in the relationship, including what their interests and responsibilities are. This has a profound influence on the child's understanding about gender. Young children like to play a role-play game called House in their first years at school. This is where they act out the different gender roles they have learned from their home. When parents, teachers, and other students reinforce traditional gender roles, children gain long-term fixed assumptions about how men and women should behave. Biological differences between boys and girls start to become more evident during puberty. Puberty is the process of changes in a child's body and mind as they mature into a young adult. On average, girls begin puberty at around age 10, and it ends at around age 16. Boys begin puberty at around age 11, and it ends at around age 17. So, what are some important changes during puberty that might affect behavior? Males become much larger. Teenage boys usually have occasional growth spurts during puberty where they grow rapidly over a relatively short time. This includes a significant increase in upper body strength, which is caused by a rise in testosterone. There is evidence that testosterone levels are related to aggressive and competitive behaviors. Some medical researchers believe that testosterone may be slightly toxic to the human body. This may explain why men generally have a lower life expectancy than women. According to a global survey by the World Health Organization, men live about 5 years less than women on average. Females usually hit puberty a bit earlier than males, and they also will have growth spurts. As a result, during the ages of 10 to 12, many girls will often be taller and bigger than many of the boys. However, by the ages of 13 to 17, the males will catch up and surpass the females by height and strength on average. Puberty is a difficult time in one's life because it can be very embarrassing to have noticeable changes to your body. The hormones in the body that cause these physical changes also cause significant psychological changes. This is when the differences in behavior between males and females becomes noticeable. Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist and professor at the University of Toronto. He believes physical and psychological differences in men and women cause differences in behavior. One example to illustrate Peterson's idea is that having more upper body strength makes males more effective at hand-to-hand combat. This results in males becoming more dangerous, which may cause females to feel more anxious and vulnerable. Peterson argues that as a result of increased anxiety, women are more mindful of their behavior in certain situations than men. For example, women are more likely to feel nervous walking through a dark alley alone at night. They are also less likely to travel to a foreign country alone. Women also need to be more careful in social situations, such as a bar or nightclub. Another change that occurs in females during puberty is that they can get pregnant. This ability can have negative consequences if the pregnancy is unwanted. This is another reason why women tend to behave more cautiously in social situations than men. You might wonder, are men and women similar in their brain structure? Compared to the biological differences we mentioned above, studies have shown that men and women share more similarities on average. The differences only become noticeable when looking at extreme behaviors. According to a study from the University of Edinburgh, the average physical structure of the brain is very similar between males and females. However, men show higher variability for intelligence, personality, and physical performance. This means, in a group of 100 people, both the most intelligent and the least intelligent people in the room will likely be men. Higher variability in mental abilities may contribute to gender stereotypes. Stereotypes are an oversimplified image or idea about a particular type of person. For example, when an exceptional man becomes famous for his extraordinary intelligence, it may reinforce the impression that all males are generally more intelligent. However, the exceptionally unintelligent males at the low end of the intelligence scale are rarely noticed in mass media. This is an example of selective attention, which means concentrating on one aspect of information while ignoring the other part of it. We have previously established that the brain structure and average mental abilities are very similar between men and women. However, the interests of men and women have been shown to differ. A cross-cultural study performed by the California State University shows that, on average, men are more interested in things and women are more interested in people. This is a possible reason for the differences in the amount of men and women performing different jobs in society. Engineering is a field highly focused on things and not people. Looking at the findings from the Office for National Statistics in the UK, women only account for 7% of the engineers in the United Kingdom in 2008. Nursing is a career highly focused on people. The same findings have shown that 89% of nurses in the United Kingdom are women as of 2008. This has led to social inequality between genders in the workforce. In many cases, male-dominated fields such as engineering and police enforcement may enjoy more respect and prestige than female-dominated fields such as nursing and early childhood education. As a result, there have been a rise of social activists pushing for more equal representation of males and females in the workplace. This is a difficult topic of debate, since a society should work towards equality between men and women. But people should be able to choose a career that they are interested in. In July 2017, an engineer at Google named James Damore wrote a highly controversial internal company memo. This memo criticizes Google's engineer hiring policy for focusing on diversity and equal representation rather than how well the candidate is qualified for the job. The memo also discusses the biological reasons that women are less interested in becoming engineers than men. After the memo was leaked to the public by the technology website Gizmodo, it was widely discussed and criticized by the mainstream media. James Damore was fired from his job at Google shortly after. This sparked a national debate in America, since his claims seemed to be prejudiced against women, yet they were supported with scientific evidence. Gender inequality in the workplace contributes to a culture where women are undervalued at work, not taken seriously, and not recognized for their contributions. This paves the way for sexual harassment and abuse by their superiors and coworkers. While progress has been made to reduce the amount and severity in the past few decades, sexual harassment still remains a serious problem in today's workplace. In October 2017, the New York Times posted an article accusing the famous movie producer Harvey Weinstein of sexually harassing actresses and employees throughout the past 30 years. After the initial reporting, more than 80 women have accused Harvey Weinstein of sexual harassment, assault, or rape. This led actress Alyssa Milano to write a tweet featuring the hashtag #MeToo as a way to give people the sense of the magnitude of sexual violence. The hashtag went viral and was included on 12 million posts in the first 24 hours. The World Health Organization estimates that 1/3 of all women worldwide are affected by sexual violence. The hashtag #MeToo movement shows that the sexual violence sufferers aren't alone and shouldn't be ashamed. Another purpose of the hashtag #MeToo is to promote unity and action towards solving the problem of sexual harassment in the workplace. Many countries such as the US, India, France, China, Japan, and Italy have had discussions in the media on what needs to be changed for sexual harassment in the workplace to be eliminated. Another major injustice to women in the workplace is wage inequality. This means that on average, men get paid more than women, even for performing the same job. One explanation that some people believe is that since men are more aggressive, they are more likely to negotiate a higher salary. A contrasting idea is that hiring managers are usually biased and are more likely to offer a higher salary to men. Men and women often fail to appreciate how similar they really are. The reality is that the average man will have slight differences from an average woman, in a similar manner that the average person will have differences from a different person of the same gender. While it has been said that men come from Mars and women come from Venus, the real home planet of both men and women is planet Earth. We have been discussing the differences and similarities between men and women and how the differences affect people in everyday life. But what happens when an individual doesn't identify with only one gender? What if they were born a certain gender but can't help feeling like the opposite one? Up to this point, we have been comparing males and females using a traditional view of gender. This view considers gender to be absolute, meaning that a person is either considered a male or a female. This is called a binary, meaning something is either one or the other, like a 1 or a 0 in computer binary. Another example would be a light switch that is either on or off. However, a more accurate understanding is that gender is a spectrum, like the spectrum of color. One can be towards the male side, towards the female side, or somewhere in the middle of the spectrum. To extend the light switch example, a spectrum is like a dimmer switch, which can be adjusted anywhere between bright and dark. People who do not identify with the gender they were assigned at birth are called transgender. Transgender people may also consider themselves as gender fluid, which is where a person feels their gender changes over time. Sometimes, transgender people may desire medical assistance to transition from one gender to another. This can involve taking hormone pills to slowly change the biological makeup of their body. A more serious procedure is gender reassignment surgery, which is an operation to physically change their reproductive organs to become those of the opposite gender. Transgender people have to deal with severe discrimination in most countries of the world. Not only are they less likely to succeed in a job interview, but they are also much more likely to receive threats of violence just because of the way they look and dress. A 2011 study by a University of California think tank found that 41% of transgender people had attempted suicide. Different countries have widely different cultural values and laws regarding transgender people. Also, people living in the same country may have very different attitudes from each other. The rights of transgendered people, as well as other members of the LGBT community, continues to be the subject of debate in many countries. The T in transgender is the final letter of the acronym LGBT, which stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. A lesbian is a woman who is sexually attracted to other women. A gay person is a man who is sexually attracted to other men. Someone who is bisexual could be either gender and is attracted to both genders. Any member of the LGBT can be informally referred to as gay. However, this usually refers to men who are only sexually interested in other men. The formal and scientific term for both gay men and lesbian women is homosexual, which can be used as a noun or adjective. People who are only interested in the opposite gender are considered heterosexual or straight. According to the 2012 Gallup survey, more than 95% of adults in the US identify as straight. A person may also identify as mostly straight if they usually prefer the opposite gender, but occasionally find themselves attracted to the same gender. This is also known as heteroflexible. Like gender, sexual preference can also be thought of as a spectrum rather than a series of fixed categories. The most famous classification of varying levels of sexual preference is known as the Kinsey Scale, as made famous by the American biologist Alfred Kinsey. Some people who oppose the rights of the LGBT community claim that since only a straight couple can create a child, homosexuality is unnatural. This is a prejudiced way of thinking, since homosexual people are naturally born this way. Just because someone is born into the straight majority should not allow them to take away the rights and freedoms of people who are different from them. In many countries, homosexual couples are allowed to get married and adopt children who have been abandoned by their straight parents. The LGBT community has faced discrimination and persecution for many years. Up until 1967, it was illegal to be a homosexual person in the United Kingdom. Even to this day, in countries such as Iran and Saudi Arabia, people caught performing homosexual acts can be punished by death. While humans have made progress accepting each other in all of our different forms, we still have a long way to go before all people born into this world feel accepted for who they are. It is impossible to truly understand the experience of another person with a different gender or sexual preference. For this reason, the best way to behave in this world is to treat other people with respect and work towards improving the lives of all other humans on Earth. That's it for today's lesson. Now let's have a quick review of what we've learned so far. In part 1, we compared the biological differences between boys and girls. A similar body composition as they share before puberty, the differences start to become more evident during puberty. These physical and psychological differences in men and women also cause differences in behavior. In the next part, we discussed about how the differences affect people in the workplace, focusing on men and women's different interests, social inequality in the workforce, sexual harassment, and wage inequality. In the final part, we also looked at how gender and sexual preference can be thought of as a spectrum like color, rather than a binary like a 1 or a 0. We took a close look at transgender people, the LGBT community, and the concept of sexual preference. The most important takeaway is, no matter what gender we are or what our sexual preference is, each of us living on Earth deserves respect and love. Thanks for your watching. This is David. See you next time.